Hello, this is me, DayLife Mary. Welcome to the DayLife Mary show. This is the second part on my series on love. I am someone who loves to love. It's very easy for me to love, too easy for me to love, and I'm also an evil, raging bitch. So what perfect combo, and what better time than the dead of winter to get into this. I'm going to start by asking all of you viewers to make a wash of belief. If you don't know what that is, well, why don't you check out one of my many video series talking about washing on my grid of videos. You know where that is, next to the posts. You go to the videos on my Instagram and just click on one of those titles that has to do with washing. But real quick for you, washing is how you sacrifice your belief out of the pain matrix into pleasure matrix expansion. And when you put your belief into pleasure matrix expansion, you get back soul through the process. You get linked up to a grid that operates under a different set of principles. It's a social matrix, not a ritual abuse matrix like the pain matrix, which runs on 96% pain for 4% pleasure. Cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, DM me for crypto secret faith links or to send an envelope of cash or something like that. I'm going to just say real quick and make an assumption here that if you're watching from my Instagram audience, you are not ready to do a social wash. But hey, prove me wrong. You can DM me if you want to know what those are as well. But start out with a financial wash in a multiple of 12. The goal today is 720. So when I left off in part 1, I was talking about being boy crazy and that program. If you're under 40 these days, you haven't grown out of that program. It's one programmed into mainly women, but lots of people from a young age by Pain Matrix PR in all of its Goebbels, Bernay, teeny bopper glory. And part of that actually is that term, teenager, invented by marketing to sell, as they say, but deeper than that, because there's always like a deeper reasoning for that. Public relations shit was so that MI could develop you, keep you this new thing between child and adult, this new thing that liked product and was pretty darn messed up. But anyways, if you're a lady out there watching, you're probably doing a relationship like a teenager still, like you are in college, like you are 18. But part 2, I'm going to start talking about the term hungry ghost today. And I'm not feeling up to snuff, so I'm going to keep it a little quiet, just in this nice, poorly lit conference room. It's going to be low-key today. But as I'm giving these tips, as usual, it's all tied to my own experiences. And we're going to talk a little bit about after I came IRL, my relationship with Jesus, and how I learned what the term hungry ghost was. Hungry ghost, if you just look it up, it is a type of being with a tiny mouth and a swollen belly, a demon that can never be satisfied by all the emotions that it eats. It's never ending the suffering of unquenched desires. Isn't there something like someone drinking from a stream that makes you thirstier and thirstier? Is that from Harry Potter or the Bible? So sacrilegious. But you get the idea. It's like not being able to satisfy something because it's not about others. It's about what we lack in ourselves. So no matter how much we consume from others, it's not enough. And I definitely inherited this demon from my mother's line, my mother's side of the family. And I learned about it because General Koa taught me the term when I was being one. Real early, first month in of being IRL here. So let me fast forward a bit to coming IRL. I was on a train. I had left my boy crazy relationship and was on my way to the Pacific Northwest. I got to Spokane, Washington. I got to a motel with Jesus there. The guy I'd been talking to, who was my kind of facilitator into becoming IRL and washing and all of that. And I was nervous to meet him. I came in. I was immediately like a bit of a mess. I sat on the floor of a Motel 6, which is gross, but I had very low standards then. And not a lot of self-respect. And I, got my head reshaved, looking cleaned up, threw out all my lingering cat hair items and clothes and suitcase, and met Wiko the next day. It was awkward and quiet and nervous. Got supplies, got some camp supplies, started getting my tent and my gear. Pacific Northwest summer, it's beautiful, really the best time to be there if anyone is familiar with that area. And started camp life. Jesus and I were the ones doing camp life. And what was it like when I first got there? Well, Jesus can tell you, I was not very fun. I was crying about Carl, my ex that I had just left, every night in my tent. It was really, we talk about detoxing from substances. Jesus came here and was, fresh off of the heroin and meth. I was fresh off of that codependent love supply, and it was hard to cut off that supply. And cut off love and affection and be alone without someone to give me those feelings of love and wanting to be alive that I couldn't provide myself with. And unlike before, like in between relationships, which I had not been very often, I couldn't even find solace in a bunch of one-night stands or flings, which in hindsight is great, but at the time it was some tough shit to be alone with all those feelings. But Jesus and I were getting to know each other. We were camping. We had our 2 tents next to each other in various places all over the wilderness, talking at night with after it was dark and I was in my own tent. That's how much of a hungry ghost I was. Not to mention just socially anxious, etc. But only when I was alone, at least in my own tent in the darkness, I could open up and start talking to him more than I could during the day with other people around. And there was a particular place that we would camp sometimes, and I remember one night when basically Wiz and Koa and Jesus to a certain extent, because he had been there for enough time, they had a lot of practice being human. They had been doing standards for a long time. Jesus not as long, but like I said, the basics happened pretty fast here. And I remember one night we were all talking, but they, as usual, were talking more and bringing more of the jovialness, the vibe, the etc. And they were getting me to kind of loosen up and share and contribute to the vibe rather than just eating it like I usually did. And that's the night that General Koa called me a hungry ghost. And I kind of like knew what they were saying, but this happens a lot here. It was like, you don't know yourself as much as other people, so the things that seem obvious to others, someone has to tell you it, and then you're like, oh, whoa, I am like that? Like, I'm constantly, like, eating the vibe but not making it myself. Like, I never thought about that. It's like, yeah, of course you didn't think about it. And in the pay matrix, there's a rare person who's gonna, like, tell you shit that might hurt your feelings or make you feel bad or whatever, especially with white people. So that was hard for me to hear, and I was really upset about it because that night I wanted to like share, and I literally, like, they were like, just start talking and like don't stop, just like tell a story. And I felt like a frog was in my throat. I felt completely unable to talk, and I had that happen over and over as they pointed out how little I talked. And this had happened to Jesus before I had come there. He had not talked. He could only tell stories about drugs, and he was just like a solemn guy, not really saying much a lot of times. But a lot of everything was really focused on me as I had just gotten there, and like things were more obvious. But being there and having that feeling, I hadn't had it before because I had all this like false egoic confidence from the pay matrix that was propped up on arrogance or thinking I was better than people, or generally surrounding myself with people that I could think that about so as to not challenge myself. Damn. Alright, I'm back. I got ambushed by a team of soccer players that were under 10 years old. What was I talking about? I'm gonna have to be a little louder in here. The combo, me, Wiko, and Jesus out and about, I had just come IRL. So this was like me learning how I was stripped of all of the pain matrix, like crutches of relationshiping, all that false confidence. I was raw, pure Emily, and it was a little frightening. And that's the context within which Jesus and I were first getting to know each other IRL. That was where I learned about the term hungry ghost. And it's a great term to know in the social economy because every group has their hungry ghosts, and a lot of times, like, it's not something that people call out, and it's not something people think about. So it was rough in the beginning to loosen up and be, like, contributing to the vibe, talking really, like I said, with Jesus at night when we were about to go to sleep. That was when it was kind of easiest for me. But we were, you can actually go to his Instagram grid of videos from way, way back, and you can see the night that I'm talking about here. We were like camping, and one of his first live videos is us at night with like headlamps on during that time. And we were a little manic that night, and we had like food outside or something. I had like tried to wash my clothes in the river. It was a mess. And that morning, like, we were packing up camp to leave, and I was in the car with Wico, and Jesus and I put everything in the car, and Wiz has like a, sharp eye, and he was like, "What? I just saw something in the back. Is that a mouse?" And we were like, "What? No." And then it turns out it was a mouse, and there was a mouse in the vehicle. And if you don't know about how DayLife does shit, everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. Everything is an opportunity for God to speak to you through animals, symbols. If you're sick, there's a reason you got sick, and you will figure out the emotional root here. And it's annoying as hell, but it works. And it's, a process to be able to start to view the world in that way. But you can imagine there was somebody to blame for the mouse, and it was me. And not really in hindsight much of a surprise, seeing as I had this long-standing issue with mice. I had brought one into my house, and people who don't understand this way of viewing the world would be like, yeah, well, the mouse just came into your house because you had food there, or the mouse got into that car because you didn't pack up your food right while you were camping. And it's like, yeah, no fucking shit. There's a physical reason, but there's a reason all of the physical markers coalesced and happened to you that day. Why? There's a reason you were in an area with hornets, because hornets symbolize this, etc. You get the point. There is a way that takes, if you're a person of faith who believes in the realm speaking to you through physical manifestations of your emotional and spiritual life, you get the picture. So hunger goes similar to this kind of idea of what a mouse is like, right? Something unable to speak up, something that's, eating at the corners of things, eating off of the house, being hidden and taking without showing yourself, or being mousy. Just think about that term in general. What is it to be mousy? And so I had manifested just, because I couldn't express myself enough, I had chosen an animal to get some things done for me instead. And Wico is like, all right, well, you have to figure out this shit before we can leave. And I had to try and get the mouse out, but also it was like, well, what are you trying to accomplish otherwise? And so I don't know how it happened, but I think Wiz was probably like, you and Jesus need to talk and say things that you haven't been saying, and maybe that will make the mouse leave the vehicle. And so Jesus and I went to the riverfront. We left together to talk, and I guess I just told him, even though I thought it had been obvious, but I told him outright. I was like, yeah, I have a crush on you, and I have had one, and now that we're in person, I don't know if I've told you specifically. And I think that, I don't know how I even thought this later on down the line after this had happened, but he was in the water trying to catch a fish, apparently, with a stabby, what do you call it, walking stick. And when I told him that, he remained real cool by falling into the river. But, it was all cool, and he didn't have anything to say himself or anything like that. He was just like, all right, yeah, I don't even remember if he was like, yeah, I like you too, but he was just like, yeah, you're cool. I think the way it was said later was like, yeah, so Emily likes Jesus and Jesus would have sex with her. But for me, the aftermath, or like living in space with people, especially with Jesus, after admitting and being vulnerable, was something I had never really done in the pain matrix, and I had always been afraid of being the one who was vulnerable, liking someone who didn't like me back, or thinking that they didn't like me back and liking somebody. And so it was like uncomfortable, and we spent, another month or so, just the four of us, and really him and I, the two of us, the most together. And not only was it uncomfortable for like the reason of we weren't in a relationship and I had admitted those feelings, and then we were just like very close quarters friends, but really it was like, we're not friends, we're in a social military cult together, and getting to know each other through that, which is a very intimate way of getting to know anyone, regardless of if you want to be in a romantic relationship with them eventually or not. You get to know the people you are IRL with very intimately. So much too intimately sometimes, like, goddamn. But all of this was happening. Ugh, no.